The Hyperspace, Podcasting in the 25th Century presents
Cloning It In. Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to Cloning It In, the Bad Batch. This is our discussion and review of the Disney Plus Star Wars television series, The Bad Batch. And as always, my name is Jared.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt.
I'm Brian, the collector.
This is the
Yes.
real Bad Batch right here, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the true. The Bad Batch is all here. So we have we sort of been remiss on our Bad Batch coverage, but hey, we're going to make up for all of that this show. The last we left you, we had covered the first 4 episodes, and now, as we record this, the 13th episode has just been released. But hey,
Wait,
strap yourselves
How
in.
many do we have left?
2.
So this show is like the 2-minute warning.
It's the 2-minute warning, and speaking of warnings, Matt.
Yes.
I've got this remote control here. It controls the spoiler alert.
So you say.
Yes. So there's a button here clearly labeled spoiler alert, and I'm going to hit it. And it's going to be the spoiler alert. We're going to be talking about spoilers throughout this series. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1. That didn't work. That didn't work like I wanted it to.
Who's that? The Nuclear Man from Outtakes from Superman?
Okay, now I'm going to try this again, and you know what? I forgot to hit switch inputs. That's what happened. Okay, that's the spoiler alert. Okay, we're going to spoil everything, so strap yourselves in. All right, I'm going to say something first off, which I always say about these shows. Man, they look great.
Yeah, I mean, I was just on the side there texting Jared about how amazing even the most recent episode, all the space station shot, all the ships. It's like I'm watching a movie. It's amazing. Yeah. It's like
I was thinking that when I was watching it. I was like, this is just incredible.
Yes, there were some shots, and it's fresh in my mind. So in episode 13, when they're approaching the space station that's orbiting Coruscant, which I like this whole idea of how they're keeping the location secret.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, like, well, how do people get there if they don't? But this episode answered that question. They check in at Coruscant, and then it's a completely automated system that takes them to Tantus. So, yeah, but those shots, like, it reminded me of Return of the Jedi. If you remember when the Lambda shuttle's going into the Death Star, there's those really wide shots. They did something similar here with this, where you got almost the same angle of this shuttle going into this giant hangar bay.
I mean, we've talked about this all season. Each season of the Bad Batch, each season of the Clone Wars as it went on, the animation just gets better and better. And I have to tell you, this season, I think the music is my favorite, bar none, of any of them. The music has stepped it up too.
Music's fantastic. The Connor crew has done a great job.
There definitely there is a lot of synth, like really strange, like atonal music. I mean, sometimes
it's anxiety music, is what it is.
Yeah. It's very much more prevalent than just sort of the sort of the orchestrations that have been used in the past. But I do like it, and we've all commented it's very Andorish.
Very much. Yeah. Even the shots that they're choosing are very Andor-like. So.
Yes, and I think it's because of the sort of the prison they're in, and but let's talk about that, because we finally were given a glimpse when we were talking about the earlier episodes, where Palpatine's going behind these laser curtains, and then he goes and he was looking at something, and we were all like, oh, is that a Snoke sickle? I mean, what's he looking at? What is that? Well, it turns out, creepily enough, he was looking at children. And also tying back, way back to the early seasons of the Clone Wars, there was an episode called Children of the Force. And this episode, I remember this episode because it literally had Palpatine just walking around like this nursery of these force sensitive babies. And it got me thinking. I mean, of course, back in 2009, there were these story elements weren't yet in place, and I don't know if they just kind of co-opted that early Clone Wars episode. But I don't. I mean, I wonder if there's even a connection. But it sort of reminded me of that, like these kids, because in that episode of Clone Wars, they were kidnapping like force sensitive children to keep them. And so that's what we've got in this episode, or not in this series of episodes. We discover that Project Necromancer is basically um, these these force sensitive kids with high midichlorian counts who are being held to mix the blood, and that's something they've also explained. Is the whole process. I mean, it's of course it's all sci-fi nonsense, but within the confines of the story, I think it makes sense what they're doing. Right. In that Omega, thank goodness, is not force sensitive, but her blood is able to be mixed with high M count blood and lose nothing in the cloning process. There's no degradation of the M count. And apparently that has been the big problem.
I mean, at this point, we're under the assumption that this program continues because we've all seen the sequels.
Yes.
And I think you're meant to assume that Omega's blood contributes to that. Although, like I said, we discussed earlier in I think our previous episode that, Grogu was obviously brought into a program maybe very similar to this. Maybe Grogu is the host per se that let the sequels happen. But if not, you have to think for a quick second how integral Jango Fett and his contribution to the Star Wars universe really was. I mean,
well, yeah, but
it just keeps going. His genetics
and never ending.
It's just unbelievable what kind of connections Jango Fett wound up having throughout all of the timeline.
That's true.
It's amazing.
But it's also worth noting that they were testing the blood of many different clones who, of course, were direct descendants of Jango,
right.
And it wasn't working.
Right.
But then again, Omega is, except for you being a female, she has a ton of Jango genetic material. Obviously, she is based on him. So yeah, Jango, the legacy of Jango lives on.
I really liked how they revealed that through the promotion of Emery in the, to take the place of, what was it, Nala Se?
Nala Se.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool because, they kind of, they had the Emperor walk in that one episode and they stop and they don't ever show you anything. And then, okay, you want to know what's really behind the curtain? Well, I'm going to put you in charge and come on, let's go look. And then, and I think she sees the horror of keeping these kids there for testing and stuff because I don't think she really had any idea.
No, and what I liked about that episode is we were learning about it as she was learning about it.
Yeah.
They were telling us as well as her what was going on. Mm-hmm. And this was also, we sort of tie back as we work sort of backwards through the series. We got a little Cad Bane in on the action, who quite ruthlessly just kidnaps this young alien baby from the arms of its mother. He just busts in there and like, no, here's one little thing, and then stuns the mom, and then just takes the kid, and you're like, oh, okay.
Kind of put him in something similar to what Grogu was in, almost.
Yeah, like the pram.
Yeah, the pram.
But it was good to have that appearance by Cad Bane again. Seeing him is always a nice treat in these shows.
One of my favorites.
Absolutely. And somebody else we got another kind of big guest star was Asajj Ventress returning.
Well, they kind of blew that one in the trailer, though.
Yeah.
I think they, you know.
And I'm kind of confused.
Yeah.
After her episode.
Exactly.
Like we don't have a lot left. And we don't have a lot of time left to wrap this narrative up.
No.
And we're wrapping the Clone Wars up. And a lot of stuff leading up to this. It's all in 2 episodes coming up. So
you got to think that's probably 50 minutes max.
I'm okay if Asajj doesn't come back and that's
Sure.
all we see of her. It's fine. She's just out there, just being herself. But there's a lot to wrap up. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen.
Yeah. So, we're sitting here at the doorstep of the finale. And, we have to assume that the Bad Batch is making their final assault on Tantus. Not to turn this into like an episode of speculation about the finale, but I think it's fair to assume that maybe some people aren't going to make it.
I think that's what we talked about in the last one. I think,
at
least what I was thinking is that Omega is probably going to sacrifice herself, and the Bad Batch will be probably sacrificing themselves for the greater good of whatever happens. But I was also thinking this might be the coda that kind of tells the last story of the clones too. We might see a final end of all the clones in this. There might be an order that comes down that they just all expire because the clones have to kind of, exit stage right in a sense for the most part.
Well, I think they have kind of set up maybe some sort of conflict with them because if you remember Hunter, Commander Wolf was his name.
Right.
Yeah, and Rex, they had a conversation.
That's right. It was Rex and Wolf. And Wolf was working for the Empire, and Rex kind of brings him around.
Right.
So a clone uprising would be an interesting thing where many clones lose their lives fighting the Empire. But I don't know how that ties into this story about Omega, about rescuing Omega.
Well, Omega went there to free the clones.
Correct.
That's what she did. And I mean, I think it's a little telling. I mean, I think there's a poison pill. I think there's an Order 66. There's an expiration marker somewhere in these clones that the Emperor's going to be able to activate, and they're all going to just done. And you're going to have some that it doesn't affect, and most that do.
But you got to think the Bad Batch, except for Wrecker,
yes,
all their chips were bad. They didn't work because when Order 66 happened, they didn't lose their minds. They were like, "Whoa, what's going on? Why is everybody doing this?"
You have the exceptions to that, of course, but I think you're going to have a mass just die off. I think it has to happen. I think it'd be interesting to see how they pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, we of course know Rex survives to the time of Rebels at least.
A little more portly at that time.
Yeah, he was a larger gentleman. He'd been enjoying his retirement.
Yep.
A couple of other, I believe Wolf was one of the clones on that walker with him.
I think you're right. Yeah, because
and
then there
was the crazy one.
Right.
I forget what his name was.
I have to go back and watch that episode.
Yeah, but he was. So we got Wolf, Rex, and the other guy, and we know they make it to old age.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we don't know anything about the Bad Batch. And like I'm with Matt, I don't think there's a lot of elderly clones running around the galaxy in the time of the Empire.
definitely not. And also the way they, I mean, they'd be really old. I mean, like they probably all die off if they, hadn't already.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're aging at double the rate.
Sure. They do say in Rebels that Rex fought in the Battle of Endor, so he made it that far at least. And a lot of people have sort of said that old guy you see,
Yeah.
they've tried to make him into Rex, but I think that's kind of been debunked. But I mean, it's cool to think Rex was in there somewhere, fighting. But yeah, as far as our Bad Batch friends, I don't think Omega is going to buy the farm.
No.
Um, but
She
I
can
don't.
survive. She's not force sensitive, so she's not one of these. Of course,
Mhm.
magically written in surviving Jedi that just exist during the Galactic Civil War. The
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's okay. She can.
I think that
She joins a Vespa gang.
yeah,
becomes
she
the
could
leader.
ride a multicolored scooters around and try to harass Boba Fett. Boba Fett, of course, is her brother.
My brother's gonna have a big deal here.
My brother's a big deal. We're going to Tatooine.
Tatooine.
Okay, Tatooine.
Tatooine.
But I think that but Matt, when you say the end of the Clone Wars, and to some degree, I think you're right. I think that this story, which started in the Clone Wars, I think they're going to start to wrap it up. However, I'm not convinced that we are not going to see another animated project in this same style of animation that picks up the threads and keeps it going. I mean, they've got Tales of the Empire on deck, which is the same animation style. And I've heard rumors they're going to be doing a Tales of the Bounty Hunters.
That could be good.
And right now it's
Davin Felth coming. No,
Davin Felth from the expanded universe, one of Matt's favorite stories.
I think that
the love
side note,
story.
you could take like the Tales from Jabba's Palace and Tales of the Bounty Hunters and all those books and do animated series on them. Or live action series, and it would be absolutely awesome if you stayed true to that material.
Yeah. Well, I think they're
getting married.
I think they are. No, don't talk to Mike about Dengar getting married and Boba Fett being the best man, because that will set him off. I mean,
that's a point of true anger with Mike. Like
that is. I mean, it's almost he almost as irritated as he was at the Kenobi TV series.
Yeah.
which is the one that finally broke him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that they are tipping the hat to these old stories, because we got the first series called Tales of the Jedi, which was a comic book series back in the 90s. Now we have Tales of the Empire, which was a book in the 90s of short stories, right. And Tales of the Bounty Hunters and Tales from Jabba's Palace were also a collection of short stories. I'm happy if they don't adapt some of those stories. It's totally fine with me. I don't need IG-88 to be in the second Death Star.
He was in charge. He was
controlling it.
That was a little weird.
Yeah. But anyway, we've gotten off track. We're here to talk about Bad Batch.
Right.
But some highlights for me this season. I think they've done a good job in the early episodes of sort of bringing Crosshair back into the fold. I thought that was handled well. It wasn't heavy-handed. It wasn't too much. There was a few episodes where they still weren't trusting him, but he was able to prove himself over the course of a few episodes, especially with he's very protective of Omega now.
Right.
In episode 5, The Return, when they go to that base that Crosshair had been at,
yes.
That he and Hunter had that conversation towards the end of that episode, which really kind of, I think, started mending some fences and kind of got that
Well, they recognized that he'd
rolling.
been through some crap,
Yeah.
and he was dealing with that, and I really enjoyed the reunion of Omega and the Bad Batch. I mean, I thought that was
Yeah.
well done, where she was hugging, like, she went and hugged Hunter and Wrecker, and was that in episode 4?
That was episode 4.
Oh,
yeah.
dang, we already talked about that. But
But it was a nice reunion.
You know what I like so far? I like how we kind of pushed aside, for the most part, our Trandoshan bounty huntress.
Rhea Perlman.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
You guys are really in trouble now.
the kind of side quest-esque nature of the Bad Batch has not really taken over this season.
No, I mean they still have side quests, but they all
point in the right
directed
direction.
at the plot. Yeah.
Yeah. So
season 3 has been very tight in that way. There's been really no filler.
Yeah. I mean,
everything is leading somewhere. I mean, listen, I think if you look at, as we record this, last week's episode, Juggernaut with the turbo tanks.
Amazing.
I mean, that was essentially it was 20 minutes. It was 20 minutes long, the shortest episode by far. But it was essentially a 20-minute action scene.
So much fun. So much fun.
Yeah. But also they were, what they were doing was important to the plot. They had to capture Hemlock. And they did. And it reminded me a lot.
You mean Rampart?
Is his name Hemlock? Is the bad guy on?
Yeah, he's the bad guy. They had to capture. I think Vice Admiral Rampart.
Rampart. Yeah, he's the jerk. I kind of like that guy though. He's
he looks kind of like Hans Gruber.
He's great
to me.
A little bit. Yeah, he's very 1980s Imperial.
Yeah,
very British and. But the thing that I liked about Juggernaut is that it did remind me a lot of that episode of The Mandalorian with Bill Burr,
yes.
where they stole one of those turbo tanks.
Man, and he was one of my favorite characters in The Mandalorian so far. He's great.
Yeah, I know he was much missed in season 3. He wasn't in season 3.
No.
But hopefully they'll get that back on track. And
we got to see the Juggernauts really in action too for the first time. Like,
and all that stuff looked, I think once again, me and Matt were like, hey, that looked like could have been live action. If they stopped cutting away to the interiors of the animated people, that could have been live action. You had all the rockets that were, sidewinding around, and
it was awesome.
And, just
the animated people aren't that much different than the or at least when they have their helmets on.
Well, that's true.
Different than Attack of the Clones.
I mean, yeah, I know when you're looking at someone who does not have flesh and blood and eyeballs and a mouth, you could almost be live action. You've almost fooled the eye that much. But that's probably my biggest takeaway so far, and I can't imagine that the last 2 episodes are going to betray this. Is that just this really tight, focused storytelling.
Yeah, it would be a tragedy for these last 2 episodes.
The first scene
to not continue that tightness.
Rhea Perlman shows up. She's like,
I got a message for you guys.
If she dies, it would be worth it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If they just go there to kill her, maybe that would be
fantastic.
Some Gamorrean porridge across the galaxy. You gotta get first.
Gamorrean porridge.
It would be great if so say something bad happened to Omega, but the Bad Batch guys survive, and they go get her, and they torture and kill her, for revenge for Omega.
Well, I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
I know.
We still have a mystery figure.
It is a kids show.
We got a mystery figure running around still. The kind of like dark assassin or spy.
Yeah, that's never been.
So I have a theory. 2 theories.
Sure.
One, when you listen to that character talk, One, I think you got the impression, by the way, that Crosshair was a failed recruit for that program.
Yes.
But when you listen to that character talk, the inflection of the voice to me sounds very similar to Crosshair. So I'm wondering if that is a Crosshair clone himself doing that. Second, who was the guy that unfortunately fell at the
Tech.
That could be
Yeah.
Tech.
Yeah, I hope it's not Tech, because one of the first things I thought when I watched that last year was like, well, they're probably going to bring him back,
Yeah, better left dead. I agree.
Yeah,
But
and
Yeah.
I think it shows, because these days in Star Wars, no one remains dead
I know.
ever.
It shows the
So-
stakes are real.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we've made it this far into season 5. What the heck? Season 3. We've made it almost to the finale of the series, and Tech, they've let Tech rest in peace, and I think
Yeah.
that's okay,
Yeah.
because
They
like
kind of
Matt
filled
says,
the gap with Echo.
yeah, I mean, well, and towards the end, like Echo and Tech were almost interchangeable in the stuff
Completely.
they were doing.
Which is, I
Yeah.
think, why they kind of made the choice. It was a
Yeah.
good. It was a good sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it didn't change the direction of the show.
Yeah, and it was a well played death. The thing hanging on the gondolas there, that was all really good. And
Could you imagine the writers' room, by the way, being like, guys, one of you two, one of your characters is not making it the next season. All right, Tech or Echo, I don't know. And in the writers' room, like, shit, I'm gonna write a better story, and they're all like, it's a dark day.
well,
Echo's writer loses out, or Tech's writer loses out, and they're like,
well,
"You're done."
fortunately, they're all played by D. Bradley
Yeah.
Baker, so
No,
he's losing no money. He's just
That
doing
guy.
all the voices.
His job got easier.
Yeah, he's like, oh, one less voice I have to marginally change.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think leaving Tech dead is fine. But I think I think next week, I think more people are going to join him. If not the whole crew, then at least some,
Yeah.
because this is their whole plan to get back to Tantus, I thought was tense. It was fun. It was very Star Warsy. I like the whole plan of them, attaching to the bottom of the ship right before it jumps to light speed.
That whole sequence
Yeah.
was amazing.
Yeah, that was great. And then, you've got Rampart there. Oh, I did not agree to any of this, you ruffians. What is all this? But so
You gotta be
that's
thankful he's out of jail.
yeah. They're lucky they don't. They've got him there. They're on their way to Tantus. They could probably just chuck him out an airlock or something. They're done. Like they don't even need to bother with him anymore, because they're
Yeah.
going to Tantus.
He should have been thanking his lucky stars. You're right. He could have been building Death Star parts.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. He could have been in one of those water prisons that they were in.
Yeah.
So, but I think the reason he's still around, he still has some part to play. I don't know if he's, but he used to work. Didn't he used to work on Tantus? And he was arrested.
He had
I mean,
definitely been there at some point, I'm pretty
we
sure.
had been there before, but I'm trying to think back on why he ended up in prison in the first place.
Remember, I have to look him up.
And I can't remember either, but it seems to me like having him there with them out in that base would be a bit of a liability, because he's a known quantity. But at the same time, I was thinking the same thing in this newest episode, when the Bad Batch is just walking around in their weird armor in an Imperial base, and everybody's like looking at them like, who are those guys? What is this?
Yeah, they even questioned it.
I know, they're like, what? This is an interesting. But yeah, I thought that was a little bit of a hand wavy. Oh, it's fine. Maybe it was a little too easy for them to get into that room, but yeah, I'm interested to see what happens when they land. on Tantus. And
You know,
Oh.
they've made Tantus very important, but
yeah,
I keep thinking, what would be a satisfying like reason for the Bad Batch to go out? Like, what would they accomplish that would be, legendary and worth their time? Taking out Tantus, maybe.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as maybe because Tantus is a secret place and it's not like it's very like just for this story is nothing like I don't know. It doesn't feel big enough for them.
I think you take out Hemlock, Tantus, you free Omega and the Jedi kids, the Force sensitive kids, and then you probably have to sacrifice yourself to do it.
I'm assuming the Bad Batch is going to go out.
Yeah,
but
Omega lives, and
you don't kill the kid. It's
don't kill the kid in a kid
series all over again.
Yeah, I think you guys are both right. I think they're there to destroy the base, and that's going to be their final act. Although
the clones get out too, or they help.
Yes. But that could also go to Matt's further, the further extinction of the clones. If those clones stay behind to help the Bad Batch and get those kids out of there. But have you noticed in some of the wide shots of Tantus, there's we see the mountain, but then off in the distance you see other mountains that look the same. That also have the lights and the technology embedded in them.
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, I've noticed that in several of the wide shots. Like Tantus isn't the only mountain that's there.
Ooh, I've got a good idea. All right, what if it's like a Rogue One ending, where the base is compromised? Tantus is tantamount to the Emperor's plans, at least this one, because the Emperor most likely is, to your earlier point, Jared, where he probably has these all through the universe. This is probably not his only Project Necromancer, spot.
Yeah.
He probably has several of these going on. So if he loses one, he's got a backup. But what if old Tarkin shows up? You may fire when ready.
Yeah,
and takes them all out.
I don't think we're quite built yet, though, are we?
Yeah, I think we're still we're
a little ways away from that.
He just rolls in with the laser.
Yeah, he's got the super laser just floating in. Yeah, you know what? That would also be very cool.
Or even if off though,
orbital bombardment, or something like something like that.
We're about 2 years on from Revenge of the Sith, so we're still about 18 years from New Hope.
Yeah.
You're
right. I keep putting myself a little closer with the.
But no, I think it's you could definitely have the Emperor wipe them out.
But sir, all of our research.
Yeah,
we got 7 more.
Yes, exactly. I think
8 Hemlocks.
I like that.
See how many Snokes I already have?
You know what? I'm mad that Matt has said that, because now I'm going to be upset if the Emperor doesn't show up and say, "Destroy them all."
Emperor, I can't stop the research.
Yes,
we're so
please,
close.
Emperor, we will can perfect your.
Wouldn't that be great to have a great argument between Nalase and Hemlock?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking
Listen,
about.
You crazy alien bitch.
Why do you talk to me like that?
You shut up.
I don't think that's necessary.
Hey, have you noticed that Hemlock's right-hand man is Scorch?
Yeah, Scorch was in the games, right?
Republic Commando.
Yeah, he was the main character.
Yeah, that's so cool. I've really enjoyed seeing those. It's
just those little
wander around.
Those little things they sprinkle in.
Okay.
Republic Commando was a really
nice
fun
touch.
So Hemlock, he's not making it.
No. Yeah, Hemlock's dead.
There's no way.
Nalase,
dead.
Yeah, probably
killer.
You know what? I don't know about
Emery.
Emery.
I could see her surviving and actually helping with the breakout.
I think
helping the rebellion.
I don't think she's making it.
Okay.
I think
the other girl could be problem.
She's integral to making this plan work, though. I think she's
She could be a noble sacrifice,
Yeah.
but
100%.
she's obviously. I mean, they are telegraphing it so hard that she is a good guy.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to turn on them.
I mean, somebody has to get Omega out of the pneumatic bank teller tube that she's about to get stuck in.
Yeah, what is her plan there? She's like taking tiles off.
I don't know.
Like,
We're going to escape.
That
she
room
gonna-
doesn't look too secure if the
Well,
Legos keep falling off.
she
Right.
could be like Cassie, and she's trying to like mess up the toilets to have them start overflowing, like he did in the.
That was genius. We're going to shock everybody to death.
Yeah, so you got to get those kids out of there. I think Emery either sacrifices or, this is incredibly non-committal on my part, but hey, she's either going to die or she's going to live. I would like to see her live, and sort of that, because she's like Omega's sister, and I think Omega lives, and I think it would be nice for her to have somebody like Emery, but I don't know. And I think Emery is also a clone of Django, but she's obviously been growth accelerated,
right?
Because she's an adult, obviously. Somebody did a like a real life portrait of Emery, but just basically pasted Mora's face on her.
That's
And
terrible.
I think Emery in the show for a computer animated character is an attractive woman, but when that Tamora Morrison's mug on her, it just doesn't work. So, but season 3, before we wrap this up completely, what are some other thoughts you guys have on season 3 thus far? Looking back at this season, Brian, what do you got?
And we kind of touched on it a lot, already, but
Yeah,
like the tightness of it, every episode you can look forward to something that pushes you towards the end game. And
yes.
and I think about the Clone Wars, and you think about how disjointed it was at times. And if it had this level of focus, it would be even more beloved than it is. I mean, it's beloved and it's fantastic, but it would be even better. And this show has done nothing but to make it better too. I mean, in a sense, just continuing
retroactively.
Continuing that forward. But and as the series as a whole, I thought Omega was annoying as crap early on, and now Omega is like a great character and has really grown throughout the series. And there's so many characters in these shows and movies and things that have no growth, and but they've done a really good job with her and growing her through the series, and that's
100% correct. Yeah, yes. I agree. She's gone from that annoying kid that we all thought in season 1, like, oh well, of course they're doing this for the kids, they're throwing in an annoying kid so the kids will want it and watch it, but they actually turned her into a character that has an arc,
right?
And
there's a slow rev up to get her arc going, but when they finally got into it and they really kind of pointed her in the right direction, her character became very watchable and very interesting, and made the batch better as a whole. But speaking of arcs, it's interesting. Like you look at like Hunter and Wrecker, they really haven't changed that much. They love Omega, they loved her last season too, and they'll just do anything for her. But there's not a lot there that has changed. Hunter is Hunter. He's the same Hunter basically. They're determined to save her, which is great. But there's not a lot going on. I think Crosshair's had the best arc so far.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where he goes and what they do with him. But I mean, the show as a whole has been amazing. It's been a good tight ride.
Yeah.
And it's only getting better and better each season. I mean, I think the second half of season 2 was phenomenal. Where it kind of got bogged down a little bit with some side quests in the beginning, but the second half of it was just phenomenal. season 3 has just been nothing but tight writing and interesting plot and like real Star Warsy stuff. Like this whole
Yeah.
series feels very at home in Star Wars. It
Yes.
doesn't feel like it's kind of shoehorned in there.
I wish
And-
they would take the time and attention to do this to the live action stuff.
Yes.
It's all about the writing, right? I mean, you've
Yeah.
got
Yes.
24 minutes, 23 minutes sometimes of storytelling, and it's done very well. And it's done with minimal dialogue when you really think
Mhm.
about it. So
Yeah.
it's like they've written a very tight, interesting episode, and it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard to do.
The very consistent names I keep seeing pop up in all these episodes are Jennifer Corbett and Brad Rao, and they're sort of like Filoni's apprentices, and because Filoni's an executive producer on this, but I don't think he's really on the day to day of the Bad Batch anymore. But you could do a lot worse. I mean, in in the recent years of the Disney era, this is some of the tightest, best Star Wars stuff that's been out. And I'd like to see these guys also get a crack at maybe something a little bigger.
Yeah.
But to if
Team them up with the Andor people, man.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's interesting that Andor is sort of an island unto itself. The Tony Gilroy, the writer of Andor, not really that steeped in Star Wars knowledge. It wasn't. I mean, he came in and sort of people say he's kind of saved Rogue One at the last minute because he did come in and sort of take over for Gareth Edwards
I remember.
directing.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
bit of a
and
shit show.
and adding a lot to the script. But it's Tony Gilroy is still largely, and I've heard him in interviews, he's still largely ignorant of the larger, Star Wars story, and he's getting there. He's got people.
It's interesting point what you just said, and I think that helps tremendously because you can look at a project like Andor, and you can look at the Bad Batch, right? And both of them could be take the Star Wars aspects out of it, right? Just make them sci-fi shows because it's not steeped in the Force. It's not you could make these shows just general sci-fi shows and still be great.
Mhm.
The plots still work when you take them out of Star Wars and just make them sci-fi in a universe somewhere. It still works. Now I think that's kind of the key to these good stories, that they're just good stories. They're not dependent on dragging you through the Star Wars lore to have you like just crawl with it because you're a Star Wars fan. They're just good stories that happen to be Star Wars stories.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and Andor's the same way. You could take all the Star Wars references out of Andor and have an amazing show.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with Star Wars.
Yeah. Though, I've got a friend of mine that has a big complaint about that because he's like, well, this could just be any sci-fi show. But I don't know. I think I'll just take the good writing in Star Wars
That's
and
just it.
roll with it.
You've got great stories that they happen to wrap into Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it's like they could be great stories without Star Wars attached to it, which makes the Star Wars is just the kicker. It just makes it
And
that
yeah.
Makes
And
it
one
that
of-
much better.
Yeah.
And not to turn this into an Andor show, but one of the things about Andor I liked was, everything you, Matt, and Brian said was true, but occasionally, maybe not once an episode, but every few episodes, you get a fantastic Star Wars action scene,
Right.
like that, like those TIE fighters flying through that celestial event, that
Yeah.
was going on, or that where he destroys the sensor on that.
The tractor beam, the tractor.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That's like only something that you can get really in Star Wars. That sort of spacey action. But balancing that also with like mature, well written Star Wars for grown-ups.
Yeah.
Which I like that. And I would even say, the Bad Batch has shared some of that this season. I mean, I was watching last week, or a couple weeks ago, when they were harassing those kids. I mean, that was sort of like, that made me feel bad.
Yeah.
I was like, man, nobody likes to see that. I mean, Cad Bane shooting his mom and then stealing the kid. That's pretty dark stuff.
Well, I think with the Clone Wars, and since it focused on like core characters of Star Wars, you always kind of knew what was going to happen with these characters, so the stakes weren't as bad. They weren't as high because no matter what happens, Obi-Wan winds up over here. You know what happens to Anakin, but like these characters, these minor insular characters in Star Wars, so the tension's up now. It's getting darker. It's more of a mature storyline, and the stakes are high because you don't know what's going to happen to these characters, and you kind of like these characters, and you kind of don't want to see anything happen to them. But at this point, anything's on the table, which was not the case in the Clone Wars. So that's why that's why like shows like Andor, you know what happened to Andor. They all have that kind of, the stakes are higher, and that's what's making me as a viewer buy into it more and be like more interested to see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's only 2 characters Andor that make it out, and that's Andor and Mon Mothma. I don't think anybody else we really know about.
And ultimately, Andor don't make it out.
No, he don't make it out. Didn't make it past Rogue One.
But you're right. If you can crack that nut in Star Wars, if you can create new characters that people are invested in, and they don't know where they go, they don't know that they're going to end up in Return of the Jedi, then you have succeeded. Because we're sitting here speculating a week out from the finale. Well, what's going to happen to these guys? Don't know. And I'm glad I don't. That's what makes it fun.
Yep.
So
it's definitely not predictable.
Correct.
Yeah. No, they've done a good job. They're keeping it close to the vest. So that's going to be the 2-minute warning for you all. 2-minute warning, because it's basically about 2 minutes until the finale starts. So we got a little busy this season, but we certainly are going to reconvene very soon after the Bad Batch finale to wrap up our thoughts. We'll talk about those couple episodes, and hopefully we'll be satisfied in talking about some great Star Wars, because that's what it's all about. Any final thoughts, guys? I mean, by the time you're listening to this episode, you've got 2 days to catch up before the finale. So it's time to get listening. If you're not caught up, get caught up.
So this episode's going to age like milk. But that's okay. It's we do what we do. So anyway,
like seal booby milk on like.
You talking about green milk?
Green milk.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, let's not talk about that, man. Thanks for ending the show on a down note, you creep. Anyway,
the greatest Star Wars failure to date.
Oh my gosh. No, we're not doing this today. All right. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you enjoyed this show, if you like the Bad Batch, if you like Star Wars, why don't you give us a follow, subscribe, tell your friends. And we got a lot more coming down on the Hyperspace Podcast Network. So I want you to keep the dial tuned in right here. May the Force be with you. We'll see you next time.
You know you can't live without this content. So subscribe to the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.